Brother's destination wedding in Barcelona was supposed to be the happiest weekend of his life. I got 31 missed calls in a single night. I thought something had happened to him. I was half right. Let me back up. I'm a CPA at a mid-sized accounting firm in Portland, Oregon. I've been doing this job for 9 years, which means I know exactly what a credit inquiry looks like, exactly what a fraudulent charge smells like, and exactly how fast a person's financial life can unravel when someone who loves them decides their good name is a shared resource. My brother Landon is 4 years younger than me. He's the kind of person who has always landed on his feet, not because he works hard, but because he is charming in the specific way that makes people want to catch him when he falls. Growing up, he got the better bedroom, the later curfew, and the benefit of the doubt. I got the good grades and the student loans and the reputation for being the responsible one, which in my family was not a compliment. It meant I was the one they called when something went wrong. It meant I was the one who was supposed to fix it. He met his fiancée. I'll call her Renata because that was what everyone called her, even though her real name was something longer in Spanish. About 8 months before the wedding. She was beautiful in a loud, expensive way. She wore perfume you could smell from across a restaurant, and she laughed at everything my brother said, and she had this habit of touching his arm every time she spoke to him, like she was claiming something. My parents loved her immediately. My mom called me the night after they met and said, "She's exactly what Landon needs, someone with ambition." I wanted to say what Landon needs is a budget. I didn't. The wedding was planned for late September. Barcelona. Renata's family had roots there, she said. She wanted a European ceremony. She'd found a venue, a restored finca outside the city, the kind of place with stone arches and orange trees in a courtyard that photographed beautifully in golden hour light. The rental was somewhere north of $14,000 for the weekend, not counting catering, flowers, the hotel block she'd reserved at a boutique property in the Gothic Quarter. My parents were not wealthy. My dad had taken early retirement from a union job, and my mom had worked part-time at a dental office for years before her back gave out. They lived in a 3-bedroom house in Spokane that still had a second mortgage on it. None of this stopped them from talking about the Barcelona wedding like they were producing it. I found out in May, 4 months before the ceremony, that my dad had taken out 2 new credit cards. He mentioned it at Easter casually, the way you mention you got a new phone, just for the trip expenses, he said. Flights, the hotel, you know. We'll pay them off when we get back. With what, I thought? I said, that's a lot of debt to carry for a vacation. It's not a vacation, it's our son's wedding. I let it go. I was getting better at letting things go. I decided not to attend. I told them I had a client audit scheduled for that week, which was true but also convenient. The real reason was simpler. I had watched my family treat money like a renewable resource for 32 years, and I did not want to be present when it ran out. I did not want to sit at a $300 a head dinner and do the math in my head all night. I did not want to smile at Renata's relatives while knowing my parents had no business being in that country. My brother texted me the week before they left. "Seriously, you're not coming?" "It's my wedding. I have the audit," I said. "You're choosing work over your own family. I'm choosing not to go into debt for a party, Landon." He didn't reply after that. Which was fine. We had been having versions of that conversation for years. The weekend of the wedding, I was home in Portland. My apartment is on the 4th floor of an old building near Alberta Arts District. I have a small balcony, a good coffee maker, and a cat named Biscuit who sleeps on my laptop. It was a Friday evening and I had opened a bottle of Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, and I was watching my family's Instagram stories the way you watch a nature documentary, interested, detached, certain that something was about to get eaten. My mom had posted 17 stories by 8 p.m., my time. The finca looked exactly like the website photos, which I had studied more than I wanted to admit. Landon was in a slim-cut navy suit, which surprised me because he'd always dressed like he was perpetually on the way to a backyard barbecue. Renata looked stunning in a way that was clearly intentional, the kind of beauty that comes from months of planning. Her dress had a train that probably cost more than my first car. My dad was in a sport coat I recognized from a decade ago, his reading glasses tucked into the breast pocket, beaming. I felt something complicated looking at those photos. Not jealousy exactly, more like grief, for a version of my family that had never quite existed. I finished my glass of wine, washed it, went to bed at 10:30. I had a run scheduled for 7 the next morning. I set my alarm and fell asleep thinking about nothing in particular. My phone woke me at 2:41 a.m. Not the alarm, the calls. I grabbed it from the nightstand thinking it was the hospital, thinking someone had died because nothing else explained it. The screen showed a list of notifications that took me a moment to actually process. 31 missed calls, 17 text messages. My dad had called 11 times, my mom 9, my brother 7. They were 4 from a number I didn't recognize, area code I didn't know, which I later realized was a Spanish cell number my dad had borrowed from someone at the hotel. The texts were fragmented, frantic. The kind of messages that come from someone who is typing faster than they're thinking. Pick up. Answer. It's bad. Reina, oh God. Call us now. We need money. It's serious this time. Please. And from my brother, I can't find her. She's gone. I sat up in the dark. Biscuit jumped off the bed. I called my dad. He answered before it finished ringing once. Where have you been? Not a question, an accusation. Asleep. It's 3 a.m. here. What happened? There was noise behind him. Voices in Spanish. Something scraping against a hard floor. My mom crying in the specific way she cries when she is genuinely frightened. Not the way she cries to make a point. Those are different sounds, and I have known the difference since I was a child. It's Renata, he said. She's gone. Gone where? Gone. She left. After the ceremony, after dinner, she took her bag and she left. She took the card Landon gave her, his Amex, and she took the cash they'd collected from the envelopes. The wedding gift money. And she... He stopped. He breathed. She wasn't who she said she was, Reina. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. What does that mean? The venue owner came to us tonight. After she left, he said the reservation, the finca, the whole weekend, it was booked on a card that declined. The one she used to secure the deposit, it was fraudulent. The venue is threatening to call the police if we don't pay the full balance by morning. It's $11,000, plus the bar tab and some damage to one of the guest rooms. What damage? A pause. Your brother. He didn't take the news well. Of course he didn't. Dad, I said carefully. How much total? With the damage and the catering balance, they're saying close to 15,000. Reina, your brother is sitting in a courtyard talking to a policeman right now. Your mother is. He stopped again. She's not okay. We're not okay. We don't have the money. The cards are maxed. We spent everything getting here. I did not say, I told you this was a bad idea. I did not say, I warned you about those credit cards. I did not say any of the things I was thinking. Instead, I said, have you called the embassy? We don't have time for that. We need the money now. Reina, please. Wire us $15,000. We will pay you back. I swear on my life we will pay you back. I swear on my life we will pay you back. You have your savings. You have your emergency fund. And there it was. I want to be careful here about how I explain what happened next, because it sounds simple when I say it out loud, but it wasn't simple at all. There was a version of me, a very old version, the version that had been trained since childhood to be the solution to problems I hadn't created, that felt the guilt immediately, like a reflex. My brother was sitting in a Spanish courtyard talking to a cop. My mom was crying. My dad's voice had that particular crack in it that I had always been physically incapable of ignoring. But I was also awake at 3 a.m, and I was tired, and something else was nagging at me. Something in the way he'd said, your savings, your emergency fund, too specific, too ready, like he'd already thought it through. Hold on, I said. Let me check something. Rena, we don't have time, 2 minutes. Hold on. I pulled up my banking app. Not because I was checking my balance. I knew my balance. I pulled up my credit monitoring service. I'd signed up for it 2 years ago after a client at work had their identity stolen through a data breach. It had been mostly useless until that moment. The dashboard loaded. There was an alert at the top. I read it 3 times before it made sense. New hard inquiry. 47 days ago. Creditor. Cascade Premier Financial. Type. Personal installment loan. Inquiry address. 4821. Birchwood Lane, Spokane, WA. That was my parents' address. I clicked through. The inquiry had been run using my social security number and my date of birth. The loan, $9,500, had been approved and disbursed 39 days ago to a bank account I didn't recognize. My hands were shaking a little, not from fear, from something colder. I went back further in the report. There was a second inquiry 6 weeks before that one. A travel rewards credit card opened in my name with a $6,000 limit. The billing address was also Birchwood Lane. There were 3 charges on it: 2 airline tickets from Seattle to Barcelona and a hotel reservation at a boutique property in the Gothic Quarter. Total charges, $4,847. The credit card they'd used to fly to my brother's wedding was in my name. The loan that had helped fund the trip was in my name. I sat very still in my apartment for probably 30 seconds. Biscuit jumped back up on the bed. Outside, a car passed on the street below. The refrigerator hummed. "Dad," I said. My voice was completely level. I was surprised by that. "Who opened a travel rewards card in my name 6 weeks ago?" Silence. "Dad." "Raina, just listen. And who took out a $9,500 installment loan from Cascade Premier Financial using my social security number?" More silence. Then my mom's voice, closer to the phone now, urgent and pressured. "We were going to tell you after. We were going to pay it back before you even noticed. Your credit score is perfect, baby. You're not using it. We weren't hurting anything. You opened financial accounts in my name without my knowledge or consent. We're your parents. That's not an answer. We needed the money for the trip, and we knew you'd say no. So you stole my identity instead." She made a sound like I'd slapped her. "Don't say it like that. Don't make it ugly. We're your family." I let that sit there for a second. The apartment was very quiet. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "I'm not wiring you $15,000. I'm not wiring you anything." My dad's voice came back sharp now. "Raina, the police are right here. If you don't help us, they're going to hold your brother. Then he'll be held. Your mother is sick with worry, then she should have thought about that. If we go home without paying that venue, the debt is going to come after you. Your name is on those cards. My credit score is exactly what I'm going to protect," I said, "starting right now." I put my dad on speaker. I pulled up another tab and called the fraud hotline for my bank. I know that number by heart. It's one of those things you memorize after nearly a decade in finance, the way other people memorize their kids' school schedules. While my dad said my name over and over on the speakerphone. "Raina, Raina, Raina," like an incantation. I reported the fraudulent credit card. I gave them the account number from my credit monitoring app, the charges, the date the account was opened. The representative asked if I knew who had opened the account. I said yes. I gave my parents' names and address. I asked them to flag it as identity theft and begin the dispute process. I heard my mom in the background start to understand what I was doing. The sound she made was not crying anymore. It was something past crying. I hung up on my dad mid-sentence. I called Cascade Premier Financial next. It took 11 minutes to get through their after-hours fraud line, but I stayed on hold. When I got through, I reported the installment loan the same way. Unauthorized. Identity theft. Here's the address of the individuals who applied. Please proceed accordingly. Then I went to all 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and placed a fraud alert on my file. That means no new credit can be opened in my name without additional verification. It takes about 5 minutes total if you know what you're doing. I have done it for clients in crisis. I had never done it for myself. By the time I finished, it was 4:20 in the morning. My phone had been going off the entire time. My brother, my mom from the Spanish number, an aunt I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, which meant my parents had started making calls of their own, recruiting. The texts were what you'd expect. How could you? They're your parents. You're letting your own family rot in a foreign country. Landon is devastated. Mom can barely stand up. You're a monster for doing this. I read them the way I read a difficult financial report, carefully, without letting any single line knock me sideways, looking for the actual information buried in the emotion. The actual information was, no one was in physical danger. My brother had not been arrested, just questioned. My parents were not in the hospital. They were in a finca courtyard in Barcelona dealing with the consequences of choices they had made freely over many weeks, with full knowledge that I would have said no if they'd asked. They hadn't asked. They had decided for me. They had decided my good credit and my clean name and my 9 years of careful financial work were theirs to spend. I thought about that for a while, sitting at my kitchen table with the lights off and biscuit on my lap. I thought about the time I was 24 and I lent my dad $3,000 for a car repair he swore he'd pay back within 6 months. I thought about the time I co-signed a lease for my brother at 27 because his credit was too thin and he promised he'd never miss a payment. He missed 3. I thought about the birthday I spent on the phone with a collections agency because my mom had used my old address for a store credit card and never told me. I thought about all the times I had assumed the best about people who had not earned that assumption. I had spent a decade being a soft place for my family to land, and at some point, I couldn't say exactly when, soft had become synonymous with usable. When the sun started to come up, I made a pot of coffee. I sat on my balcony with my mug and watched the neighborhood wake up. A woman walked a dog. A man in a reflective vest unlocked a delivery truck. The light came in from the east, gray first and then gold, the way it does in Portland in September. My phone buzzed again. I looked at it. My dad. I let it ring. When I was ready, I called my own attorney. She is a woman I met through a professional contact 3 years ago, and I've referred several clients to her since. I have never needed her for something personal. I left a message explaining the situation and asking her to call me that morning. I sent a follow-up email with the credit monitoring screenshots attached. Then I drafted a document. I'm a CPA, documents are how I process things. Laying out the timeline. The date the card was opened. The date the loan was disbursed. The charges made. The dates. The amounts. The connection to my parents' address and, in both cases, my personal information. I saved it to my hard drive and emailed a copy to myself and to my attorney. I was not going to let this disappear into the chaos of family feeling. I was going to treat it like what it was, a financial crime committed against me by people who had calculated that my love for them was a vulnerability they could exploit. The calls and texts continued through the morning. My aunt tried twice. My mom's best friend from church, a woman I had called Aunt Patty growing up, sent a text that said, "Your mother is heartbroken, please call her." My brother sent a message at 7:40 a.m. that said only, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't answer any of them. What I did do, I ate breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. I went for my run, the one I planned the night before, 5 miles through the neighborhood while the morning air was still cool. I came back and showered. I answered emails from actual clients with actual problems I was actually equipped to solve. I fed Biscuit. I made a second cup of coffee. My attorney called at 10:15. We talked for 40 minutes. She confirmed what I already knew, that what my parents had done constituted identity theft under Oregon law, as well as federal statute, regardless of family relationship. She walked me through my options, which were more than one, and less than infinite. I told her I had already placed fraud alerts and initiated disputes. She said that was exactly right. She said she'd draft a letter. I asked her whether I should press charges. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "That's not a legal question, that's a personal one. I can tell you what your rights are, I can't tell you what to do with them." I appreciated that. I have never liked people who make my decisions for me. What I will say is this. I did not immediately call the police and file a formal criminal complaint. I did not do that. I filed the fraud reports with the creditors, which triggers their own investigation processes. I placed the credit freezes, I documented everything. What happened after that? Whether the creditors chose to pursue it, whether the dispute process generated any referrals, was outside my control, and I made peace with that. My parents returned from Barcelona 4 days later than planned. The venue situation was eventually resolved, from what I understand to my aunt. My dad sold some stocks he'd been holding for years, and they came up with enough to avoid further legal trouble in Spain. My brother flew home alone. Renata was not found, or if she was, no one told me. I know all of this secondhand, because I have not spoken to my parents since that morning. My aunt called me 2 weeks after they got back. She said my mom was devastated. She said my dad knew he'd made a mistake. She said the family thought I should find a way to move forward. I listened to all of it without interrupting, which I think surprised her. Then I said, "They stole my identity. They used my credit to fund a trip I told them not to take. When they got caught, they tried to use that debt as leverage to extort money from me. I need you to understand that I'm not refusing to speak to them because of a misunderstanding. I'm refusing because of what they chose to do." My aunt said she understood. I'm not sure she did. It has been almost 5 months now. The fraudulent credit card has been removed from my credit report. The installment loan dispute is still processing. These things take time. But I've been assured it will be resolved in my favor given the documentation I provided. My credit score dipped briefly and has since recovered. My attorney sent the letter. I have not heard from my parents directly. My brother texted me on my birthday. It said, "Happy birthday." Nothing else. I read it and put my phone down and finished my coffee. I'm not going to pretend this has been easy because I think people who say things like that, "It was the easiest decision I ever made," are either lying or they had a much simpler version of the situation. It was not easy. Some nights I lie awake and think about my mom's voice in that Barcelona courtyard. The fear in it that was real even if everything around it was wrong. I think about my dad's face at my college graduation, how proud he was, how that pride was genuine and still did not prevent him from doing what he did. I think about the version of family I wanted and the version I actually had, and the distance between those two things. But here's what I know. Sitting in my apartment 5 months later with my cat and my paid-off car and my clean credit report, I am not someone's emergency fund. I am not a resource to be accessed without permission. I am not obligated to absorb the consequences of other people's decisions simply because we share a last name. I made one call that night, several calls technically. But the first one, the one to the fraud hotline, was the one that mattered, because it was the first time in my life that I chose to protect myself before I chose to protect them. The coffee I made that morning at 4:30 a.m., sitting in my quiet apartment with my documentation open on my laptop and the city still dark outside my window, it was the best cup of coffee I'd had in years. I don't think that means I'm heartless. I think it means I'd been thirsty for a long time and hadn't let myself notice. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that night, not in any grand philosophical way, just the plain honest version of it, the version where you trace a line backward from a consequence and follow it all the way to the decision that started it. And every time I do that with what happened in Barcelona, the line doesn't lead to Renata, who conned my brother and disappeared with his cash. It doesn't lead to the venue owner or the Spanish police, or any of the circumstances that felt so enormous at 3 in the morning. The line leads to a pattern, a long, quiet pattern of me absorbing what other people refused to carry. My parents didn't steal my identity in a single reckless moment. They did it after years of learning that I would cover the gap. Not always with money. Sometimes with time, with energy, with the emotional labor of being the one who stayed calm when everyone else came apart. Every time I had quietly cleaned up a mess without making them account for it, I had taught them something. I had taught them that there was no real cost to leaning on me, that I was structurally incapable of letting them fall. What happened with the credit card and the loan was just the logical end of that lesson, pushed to its limit. I don't say that to excuse what they did. It was wrong. It was a crime, technically and morally, and I treated it as one. But understanding the pattern is the only thing that makes it possible to actually change it, rather than just survive the latest version of it. What I keep coming back to is this. Intelligence without honesty is just a more sophisticated way of fooling yourself. I am good at my job. I can read a financial statement in 20 minutes and tell you exactly where a company is bleeding, but for 32 years I could not look at my own family and call what I saw by its real name. I kept translating their behavior into the most charitable possible version. They're struggling, they love me, they don't mean harm, until the translation became a kind of lie I told myself on their behalf. The night I stopped translating was the night I got my life back. That's not a small thing. Rena, the responsible one, Rena, with the perfect credit score, Rena, who always picks up. She existed because I built her carefully, on purpose, out of very specific choices about how I wanted to live. And I almost let other people spend her down to nothing because I confused loyalty with self-erasure. The courage it took to make those calls, to the fraud hotline, to the bank, to my attorney the next morning, was not the dramatic kind of courage. It didn't feel like strength in the moment. It felt like cold, quiet clarity. It felt like finally doing the obvious thing that I had been trained my whole life to treat as unthinkable. What I want anyone to take from this is not that you should stop loving your family. It's that love is not the same as being available for harm. You can grieve the family you wanted while still protecting yourself from the one you have. You can do both at the same time. They don't cancel each other out. Landon texted me happy birthday and I put my phone down and finished my coffee. That's where things stand. And I am, surprisingly, okay.